been posted for maybe 6 hours, and then it says you need a new link, yes.
I don't know, I haven't had that happen, but sometimes it happens because the number of, like, enough people have already signed it that it's.
I was just curious.
I don't know.
At the time, I've been caught in that as well. I'm not sure how long. Also could be that enough board members, in most of the school boards at least, there's 3 signed and it's the checks to be sent, so.
I just
Sooner
wanna make
you
sure
guys
it's done.
do it, the better.
Is there any public comment? Okay, so we'll go Gail, then Lynn, then Renee, is that right? Okay.
Hi, I'm right here because otherwise I belong back. I'm Gail Marshall from the town of Mount Desert. In your agenda that just got attached this afternoon is a letter that I wrote to you as well as to the Islander, submitted to the Islander as well. I just want to amplify some things in that letter, and that is it's about the so-called executive order that pertains to K-12 education. My suggestion is that it's probably not going to be the last thing you hear about this issue from this administration. You're going to start getting specific demands. If you read, I have included a link to that executive order. I would urge you to read it. It's full of nonsense, particularly as it pertains to how you run our schools here, and we have always run the schools here. And I want to say that as the school board, it will be your responsibility to communicate with the community about what's being demanded and what your response is to that. It's your responsibility to run these schools, not somebody in Washington. And so you get to decide what the policies are, rather than these articles we're seeing in the paper about schools wondering if they're going to have to trash all sorts of policies that they have as a result of this. No, you don't. And I want to say that 20 years ago, we woke up one morning and John Baldacci had told us that we were all going to consolidate into one school district for Hancock County. And he was going to force it through in legislation. And we said, I don't think so. And for 2 years, we fought John Baldacci in the legislature, to the point where at one point he told, supposedly, I wasn't in the room, but he told the Speaker of the House and the President of the Senate that he did not want to hear the letters MDI. And then he settled with us. So you can do this. You have to involve the community if you need to. And I suspect you will. You have to involve the community. You have to involve your state legislators. You have to go to your federal representatives and tell them what you expect from them. And you have to lather, rinse, repeat. You can defend these schools. And I would urge you, and that's part of your responsibility, I would urge you to do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're a chair.
Great segue.
I know, it was a really great segue. We didn't even plan that.
So hi everybody, I'm Lynn Gatz and I teach Spanish and yoga and mindfulness here at the high school.
And I'm Renee Labor, and I also teach Spanish here at the high school.
And I think I can speak for both of us. First, we just want to acknowledge our gratitude for all of you and all of the work that you put in. We know how much you support all of the staff in our schools, our families, in our communities, and we know that you prioritize students. And so we are here tonight, we come this evening with a couple of requests. And in light of the dynamic changes that are happening in DC and the United States Department of Education, we ask that the AOS91 Board of Mount Desert Island Regional School System issues a public statement that reiterates that our schools are safe, supportive, and welcoming places of learning for all of our students.
That MDIRSS AOS91 reaffirms its commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. That MDIRSS AOS91 continues to advocate for anti-racism initiatives and task forces in our schools. That MDIRSS AOS91 stands firm in its commitment to our LGBTQIA+ students, that they feel safe and valued in our schools, and that MDIRSS AOS91 will uphold its policy for transgender and gender-expansive students, that MDIRSS AOS91 will protect immigrant students to the fullest extent permitted by law.
And so the public statement is one request, and then the second would be more around policy. And I looked through and I wasn't able to find any policy in regards to immigration. And the transgender and gender expansive policy was so intentional and so incredibly well written. We asked that the school board create policies to ensure that our schools safeguard our students in regards to immigrant enforcement. And we asked that the board outlines policies for school personnel in regards to requests from immigration, customs, and enforcement ICE agents, that personnel will not disclose student information to ICE nor permit them on campus without any required paperwork nor prior notice to the superintendent. So thank you all very much for listening.
We don't respond, but we will be covering that, or Mike will be covering that topic in shortly, so if that's of
Tonight?
interest to you, yes.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any more public comment? Okay. So, approval of minutes from 13 January 2025 regular meeting and 22 January 2025 annual public budget meeting. We can take them as a slate.
So moved.
Is there
Second.
any discussions? All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. Reports and updates, the superintendent report.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, and I'll just thank, the January 22nd, that was our annual public budget meeting, and I want to thank board members and the staff that were here on that night that voted for the AOS budget. That's making a step in the right direction for our students and the staff here in the district, so I much appreciate that. And so our February update, remember our district service promise is interrupting educational inequity and creating schools where every child and staff member thrives one conversation at a time. Our enrollment for February is down by 7. You heard Matt say, well, it was up at the high school, and then in the elementary schools we had a couple leave here, some go there, and it's that constant movement. Often this time of year, we find families who have businesses over the summer and work straight through the summer. Oftentimes they'll go and live somewhere else for a little while and homeschool their children, and sometimes that's reflected in these numbers. But that's sort of the ebb and flow that happens within our district. Staffing. We are in the process of hiring a person to fill that half-time data specialist for the special ed office in the central office. So you see that that is removed from here. I forgot to add that we have a long-term sub for grade 2 at one of our schools under regular ed. I didn't get it here, but we already have applications for that position. We're coming in today. So very excited that as folks are needing, whether it's for babies or whatever, of finding individuals to cover them. So there's a couple of applications that came in for that position. And anytime someone, if you're on the website and you're cruising through my update, you can always click on the link there to see all the various opportunities, school by school. The highlights from across our district over the time since we've been gone. Matt had already mentioned wrestler Mason Rose had 100 wins. I have a soft spot in my heart, believe it or not. I was a high school wrestler back in the day, so go Mason. Also, 9th graders did visit HCTC to get a taste of the program offerings. And if you were to go on Talk, you would sort of see some of the things that the students were doing when they were there that day. And also, the applied science forensic class did some crime scene investigations around the school as sort of part of that class. That was a class my son took, and it was probably one of the things that got him interested in wanting to be a police officer, but now he's a firefighter, so you never know what those experiences will take our students. Over in Ashley Bryan, they are participating in the winter kids activity, and this past week they're focusing on precipitation. Students built snowmen to see the impact of the albedo effect, which looks at light absorption and refraction, and they built snowmen and they put bags on them, a clear bag and a dark plastic bag to sort of see what would happen, so that's pretty cool. And on their Family Fun Friday, they're sampling healthy fruit from Hannaford, so trying different things to explore fruit. They are right now in second place in the Winter Kids. There are 16 schools across the state. One of the parts that they had to do was to show people in their community and their school doing things outside, and if you go on to the Cranberry Island newsletter, you'll see a picture of Julie and her family skiing. You'll see a picture of me ice biking on Toddy Pond. You'll see Matt Haney walking his dog in the woods, and there are a series of other pictures of board members going for walks. Ashley Bryan, Cranberry Island School board members. They came in second there, so they got very close, but they lost to those in North Haven. Frenchboro, we're going to be building their budget starting in March. We're going to skip over. But in the last meeting that I had with that community, the board is still interested in making sure that school stays open, even if there's no students at the time being. And so the idea is to sort of think about in March what's going to be that optimal level to be able to bring forth to the community at their town meeting. But it seems like there's a strong feeling to want to hold on to it for that. At Connors Emerson, it was dressed as a student and dressed as a staff day. I do remember during one of those days when I was assistant principal, I used to carry a book and a clipboard just sort of take notes because people are always bombarding you. And this one young man came in, and I wore a tie back then, and he had his tie on. I just had a mustache and my glasses, of course, and there he was walking around with his clipboard. So that's always a fun day. 7th and 8th graders are prepping for the district speech contest, and other schools are doing that across the district. And floor hockey is in full swing in PE classes there at Connors Emerson. Over at Trenton, the main outdoor school programming has begun. They are meeting on Mondays, and it's January through March. And each grade level has participation when that group comes to explore the outdoor classroom and the outdoor environment over at the school. One of the neat things, if you were to go to the school, you will see middle school art that they did. It's called Macro Animal Eyes, and there's these beautiful renditions of animal eyes that the students did of real close-ups, and it's just amazing the shades, the colors, and just how well they captured depending on the animal. Just really cool, and those are hanging when you walk on them. And grade 1 wrote some persuasive essays to Principal DeGrassa about their PAWS program, and that's a way of recognition of students. I haven't looked at them yet to see what they were actually asking her, so I'm going to do that at our upcoming meetings to see what she learned from the first graders about the PAWS program. Over at the Pematic School, I had talked about their Pematic Points store is opening. It opened in January. They still haven't named it yet, but I think we're going to find out. It might be the Peregrine Provisions, but the school was voting on the store, and then students, based on their semi-PBIS, they'll be earning some points, and then they can go to the store, but they have to name the store, and they're working on that. The University of Maine was here on our PD day. We had our half-day AI. Each school had their own independent time, and they did some work on inclusion and differentiation. And then the Math Counts Club, they participated in competition at the Hampton Middle School. Over on Swans, they did their local spelling bee to get ready for the district-wide bee. They did their AIMSweb benchmarking, and it was reported that many of their students are showing the expected growth through that assessment measure. And the MDI middle school basketball team in Pematic, the Trematic team went out, I think it was about 2 weeks ago, and visited Swan and had their day out there playing basketball with the team from Swans. And then Swans, I think, is coming on in the next couple weeks, and they'll be actually going to the airline to play basketball with that small school there. So they get around. Over in Mount Desert, the kindergartners were looking at homes around the world and constructing them either out of wood and snow. And if you look at their newsletter, you kind of see students exploring that. Sixth graders were outside with microscopes looking at the structure of snowflakes. And in pre-K, in their Discovery Center, the kids were working on creating a laundromat. And then over in Tremont, sixth graders had their visit from the Maine College Circle organization, and that's the group that works on aspirations for students. And they come around to all of our schools, and the students write aspirational essays, and then they have a contest, and then they receive some funding for their potential if they want to go to college. And seventh and eighth graders in science were dissecting starfish, and the kindergartners were constructing dioramas as part of their animal life cycle and habitat. So a lot of really interesting things happening at all of our schools sort of across the district. It's always a wonderful time to sort of spend time looking at newsletters and reviewing principals' reports, then visiting to see what's happening in classrooms. For our review of budgets, you will see that those highlighted in yellow are the ones that are completed, so you can see where we are, what the total budget was, and the assessment. Of course, AOS91, Connors Emerson, Swans, and Cranberry have all had their school budget votes, and that's what that represents. Then I'll be doing the high school one for tomorrow, so when this is online, people will see the high school's budget there. And then we can look at the dates for the upcoming meetings. And we're still working on final approval for Pematic, Tremont, Mount Desert, Trenton, and like I said, Frenchboro will be starting theirs. We're going to skip over February and start theirs in March. And updates. So we had to postpone the Northeast Harbor Vision of a Graduate. And so now that has updated and will happen February 10th at the Northeast Harbor Library at 5:30. We will have a link to that, Julie?
Yeah, it's on our website. It's also on the library website. You would have to register if you want to go online.
So if you can't go, you can participate. And I'll just remind people that this isn't just for that community. So if you missed one in your community and you want to go down to the Northeast Harbor Library, please go down. Remember, if you remember from one of my last updates, the students have an art show in there, so you get a little double duty. You get to talk about your dreams and aspirations for our graduates and see some of the artwork that the students at MDIRSS completed. One of the other added times is Connors Emerson, March 3rd. That'll be at 5:30, and it'll be in the Connors Emerson Library.
I think that's board meeting that night, at 4:30.
I think Heather was expecting you to be done by 5:30.
Pressure is on. And then I just wanted to update the AI training on the PD Day. We heard a little bit about it at the last meeting. We had it, and I just want to thank the partners. We had local staff, local business partners, as well as community partners, the DOE, and COA staff here working, and I thought it was time well spent and appreciated in deepening our staff's understanding of this technology and its role in our lives and education. I think we probably got the most feedback on that in any of our PD days. And I think the important piece on it, you would think, well, geez, why are we doing that? One of the important roles that our office plays is oftentimes making sure we're looking ahead at the things that are going to significantly impact teachers and students and the work that they're doing. And I think that time allows folks to sort of take a look at what the technology is, but also grapple with some of the ethical and environmental questions that are part of AI as it's sort of impacting our world. And Julie and I were talking, it used to be you would think, well, should I use AI to ask a question or ask Google? Right now, when you ask Google, you're asking AI. And so these things are moving really quickly, and to make sure that staff have a really understanding how best to use it, I think is really important. So I appreciate the work that the team here did and moving that forward. Staff spotlight. I wanted to highlight Ian Braun, Dean of Students here at the high school. Ian has been the editor-in-chief of Chalk Talk for years. One of the places I go, if it's not that I learn from walking around, it's I read Chalk Talk to sort of, get a sense of what's happening at the high school and sort of share that with you all. There's a lot there that is shared in terms of what students need, whether that's for work that they need to do for community service or the things that are going on, what seniors need to do. It's just chock full of information, and thank you, Ian, for doing such a nice job over the years on that. And then also, if you didn't know, every morning Ian is out there as buses are arriving and he is welcoming students into the school. And then at the end of the day, he is out there as they are leaving. And so he makes a concerted effort to be there for students in many different ways. And then on top of that, you could look at the work on the review board, the restorative board, and moving that work forward in supporting students. So big shout out to Ian.
I couldn't do the talk about Mary Corlo.
I'll mention Mary.
Yes, Mary Corlo. Key.
She is key. And then I wanted to highlight the variety of staff who participated in the PD and AI, and that was Kelly Sanborn, Hannah Mondrock, Kate Meyer, Matthew Mayo, Devon Pappas, Mark Arnold, Cindy Lambert, Lou Jones Rodriguez, and Wendell Opalwall. And they shared their knowledge and experience with AI in that practical sense, and was able to round out, like I said, a really thoughtful half a day on AI. And it's really wonderful. And I think some of you have heard your principals sort of talk about utilizing the staff in their schools to sort of provide some of that in-house professional development. I think it means a lot to the teachers who are sort of stepping up and putting themselves out there, and to their colleagues who are learning from them. Also, a shout out to Ashley Stanley, who's a kindergarten teacher in Tremont. And she's just been a real leader in the development of our early learning programs here within the district, from pre-K on, and working on the Gold program and supporting our pre-K work, specifically on observational assessments and play-based learning. So thank you to Ashley for that. And for Ann Rohde over at Trenton in grade 2. She has sort of been a model in our Schoology implementation at the elementary level. She lets us know what's working and what's not. And she comes to anything that she puts her mind to with a mindset of wonder and possibility, as well as that critical insight to know if it's working for teachers. And her work will just sort of help benefit all of us as we sort of work through that work. Reorganization, we have a meeting coming up on February 12th. The focus will be on voting and community messaging, one of sort of the last pieces of what our plan needs to be. What I mean by voting is that's the part where we have to state how we see the voting going when it goes in front of all the towns. And so it could be the model where if one of the towns says no, then it doesn't happen, or the RPC can decide that if there are some towns, a core group of towns that need to be a part of this to make this work, and they'll all have to decide that. And so, and then that will be shared with the communities about, when they go to vote, they'll know what that means. And so they'll be doing that, and then thinking about what community messaging needs to be. And then we'll start planning our visits to all the towns to sort of share the final plan. And again, I always say, please go to the reorganization website. You'll be able to see the proposed timeline. You'll be able to see every presentation that we have done to that group to make the decisions, and you'll be able to see summaries of all the meetings to sort of get a sense of what that final product would be. And there's that link to be able to go and ask questions if you have any. And then finally, sort of the school board quarter legislative update. But I did want to be able to respond to some of the things that are coming from the federal government. And so when this goes up online, you'll be able to click on some of the links. So the first thing we'll take a look at, because the first thing that came to my plate was potential ICE enforcement in our schools. What I did is I met with the administrative team, spoke to our lawyers, and the guidance that Drummond and Woodsum set out to all schools to sort of help define what the what are some of the guardrails that schools have. This also had for our school staff, there was also the section on the procedures that office staff will have, because they're the ones who are going to be the first person that see anybody that comes. It's the same like if it's a DHHS person that comes to school. There are procedures that we follow, and so administrators have worked with their office staffs, and they have the procedures of knowing what they need to do. So basically, the Supreme Court has stated that there is a right to education, and that is protected in Plyer versus Doe. And so regardless of immigration status, students have the right to be educated. So that's important for folks to understand. One of the issues is the role of local police or SROs. We have an SRO, we have local police, and we have school board policies, KLG and KLGR. That sort of helps us define what the role of our public police are in schools. Our board strongly discourages law enforcement authorities from using the schools as a venue to arrest students or staff on school grounds. Within those policies, the superintendent retains the authority to deny law enforcement access to students for non-school related investigations. Our MOU specifically prohibits the SRO from acting outside of their role and prohibits them from arresting students unless they pose a real and imminent threat to students. And in my conversations with local law enforcement, I was assured that in accordance with legal responsibilities, local law enforcement agencies enforce state and local laws within their jurisdiction. Matters related to federal immigration enforcement fall under the purview of federal agencies, and local law enforcement is not authorized to act in that capacity unless compelled to do so by a federal judge, which is different, and I'll get into that, what an administrative warrant might be. And so if agents were to show up here, it's important for those front-facing staff to know that ICE agents cannot remove individuals from schools without a federal court warrant signed by a federal judge or magistrate judge of the United States District Court. Administrative warrants, that might be signed, that might say, hey, you can go in here, and it's signed by some secretary of whatever federal office. That is not a judicial warrant, and does not allow or give someone the authority to compel school officials to cooperate at that level. If ICE agents arrive at school, administration and school office staff have been trained on protocols. Agents are not permitted to enter the school as part of that protocol. Any communication happens in our, where we have folks come in and talk through the class with our staff. And they are to call the administration, and they have the opportunity to contact me. The other piece that is sort of coming out of this is, making sure that FERPA rights are protected, and under the Family Education Rights and Privacy Act, educational institutions are not allowed to share personally identifiable information about students unless a parent consents or under certain expectations that are applicable. There is an allowance for school directory information, such as names in certain situations. However, schools have 10 days to respond to any request for records, so we don't have to hand anything over immediately by law. And only a federal judicial warrant or lawfully issued subpoena can compel schools to provide student information. The principal will consult with legal counsel and myself before releasing any information. And on the sheet that was shared, that when in doubt, contact the superintendent. The next piece was the executive order on defending women from gender ideology. That's the short version. Please know that MDIRSS schools will continue to abide by the protections provided by our school policy, Maine law, and the Maine Human Rights Act. Those are links there that you can go and see our policies on LGBTQ and gender equity, and also a link to the Maine Human Rights Act. The Maine Human Rights Act prohibits discrimination in employment, housing, places of public accommodation, education, and the extension of credit. The Maine Human Rights Act prohibits retaliation for asserting these rights. So in terms of the organization wanting to protect those rights, nobody can retaliate for you trying to follow Maine state law.
What is defending on infringement?
You can go,
It's an executive order.
it's an executive order.
I know it's the name of it, but what's the?
The gist of it is that, yes, there you go. That's the bumper sticker issue.
Yeah.
And then the ending radical indoctrination, this is the one that speaks to curriculum. This came out on Friday. This recent executive order does not alter our obligation under state law and the Maine learning results, which includes pieces of the Maine Human Rights Act and requires no change locally to our adopted policies. You know, I will continue to monitor this information that comes from the Federal Department of Education in partnership with the DOE and with Drummond and Woodson as more of these come in to see how they impact our schools. And then finally, I had an update for the Power School, the security issue. Power School will be emailing impacted individuals, so whether it's a staff member or a student's family, if they were impacted directly, and they will have the option to sign up for some free credit monitoring provided by Experian. And so folks will hear rather than directly from the school district, they'll hear directly from Power School, and they'll provide that. If your information is in, that happened in their cyber attack. I think that's my report.
Other questions for Mike?
I just say, on a much, much lighter note, if the DOT changes the ferry schedule for Swans Island students, will that affect their being here, getting here on time? Because they might, instead of leaving from Swans in the morning, they might be in Bass Harbor and then go there and then come back.
I've heard of that, and we have folks on the school board and on Swans that are part of that organization that sort of speaks with Gary, I forget what his title is, and taking a look at that, but I know that that is an issue and we're looking at it, and hopefully recognizing the last time I spoke to him about French Borough students, they were working really hard to minimize any kind of impact that might happen there.
So it wouldn't be their fault. They're late.
But I know that's one of that's a proposal.
So I'm really grateful for all that information about ICE and the recent executive orders. I'm wondering how other people on the board feel about the request made by our teachers that we put out a statement. Is a statement, since we do, it sounds like, have strong policies set in place, is a statement likely to inflame people who don't like the idea of protecting our students, or is it something that we want to do?
I think, well, we should put it on an agenda, put it on an agenda item for another meeting. But we can certainly do that.
Okay.
Is there a place to see this stuff on the website as well?
These are linked, so.
Yeah, these are all linked.
Yeah, this tomorrow morning, this update will be on there.
I have a question about the Power School thing. Thanks for bringing that up. So it was on my list to ask you about. It's been a long time since the breach. It was in December. We need to find out about it for a while. So I guess my question is, are you getting like more communication from Power School than we know about? And can we really trust that, like, I mean, are they really gonna email us if they're, what is impacted?
I certainly hope so.
What's the level of like impact, like, I'm actually surprised that we haven't gotten a link already, like just up a blanket link to everybody in the system, which is pretty standard. When there's a breach, that we would all get like a basic link right away to sign up for a credit monitoring. I have like 17, it's
Yeah.
like kind of, but which for me is concerning is because of the students, and so once they turn 18, their socials are out there in the world, and so it's a little bit different than when you have a child, because your child will fall under your current credit monitoring, but if they're an adult already. So if my now 18-year-old was breached, in this, because she was a student of it's like a kind of a more critical than a child that's under 18 that would already fall under my current. So that's me explaining why I'm like, I have a little bit of heightened wonder about.
Me too, because my information was there.
What'd you say?
I said me too, because my information
Right, I
was
mean,
there.
I know, like, as adults, we've like probably gone through this before,
Yeah,
but like the child thing, that especially as they as they become 18, which changes everything, they're not really protected anymore under your current credit monitoring that you may have because you've been breached, 100 times or whatever. So I guess I'd like more information about that and wondering why it's taking them so long. And if you have more information, you can share.
I will ask. One of the things that they said, early on when they were sharing with districts across the state was that it was their belief, based on everything that occurred, that they were able to get the information back, that it didn't make its way to the dark web. And they have, I think CloudStrike was the organization that they shared that is actually looking for that information out there. And so potentially that the reason we haven't received anything is nothing's out there yet to be able to share. I'm not sure who is back there and may be able to clarify a little bit. But they have been having meetings every other week or so as Power School has sort of shared information for tech teams at schools. And then it was just on Friday that we received the note that they are going to be contacting people directly if they're impacted. So the hopeful sign is that we haven't received anything, we're okay. Yes, that's Pollyanna.
Yeah, like, right, so we're holding on to the information and like, I don't know, I'm annoyed that they're taking so long to do
We're kind of
this.
in a holding pattern, that's what they kind of put us in, because they're trying to delve deep into the school police themselves, this is what they're saying. So, just kind of waiting to hear what they let us know.
Yes. Actually, our team has pushed quite a bit.
That's good, that's my only question.
Very different comment. The vision of the graduate. I'm glad to see that an extra one was added in March. I've been to 2 of these. I was disappointed in Tremont that it was really a school board meeting because it was 4 school board members and the principal. So I've tried to tell people about it and get the word out, but so many times when I tell people about it, they're like, I've never heard of this. Can we please try to get this a little more out there? Like maybe ask the newspaper to write another article. I know it was written up once, but people don't always see the paper. I am an old person who uses Facebook. I know the guidance has good Facebook and Instagram accounts. Maybe they can blast it out. I think these are important conversations, and I'd like to see different types of people besides just us having them. So that's my request.
10 people to the next.
What was that?
Each of us should invite 10 people to the next.
Yeah.
That would be helpful. Everyone I personally invited showed up. I mean, that really usually is.
Yeah, the one here in
The
the high school
were all
had
people I asked.
so that had a great it had people from COA and Camp Beechcliff and Jackson Lab and a good representation. And I went to the one in Tremont thinking I'd love to see a fisherman show up or a couple of different types of folks. And it was 4 school board members and a principal. So
We do have it up on Facebook now, just FYI. So, and we are going to do a Zoom session with the library next Monday. Spread the word. They can do it through Zoom.
Yeah.
So this is their chance if they want to do it online. And personal invites. Susan brought her mother.
We'll do another newspaper, Islander, and then also I can talk to the Harbor Story and make sure it gets out there as well.
and ask Chris Popper. People pay a lot of attention to Chris Popper.
Okay, anyone else? Hey, directors of teaching and learning.
So we're going to split. I'm going to talk about common study leaders and learning area leaders. our common study leaders are wrapping up their third year in those roles, and the February note was about soliciting input or sign-ups, I guess would be a better way to say it, for the next 3 years so that people can be trained in March. And actually the May Common Study, it will be their first time facilitating. And then they go for 3 years. Julie and I meet with them regularly before each one of their Common Study meetings and provide input and support. And if they're having some trouble with facilitation, we talk it through with them. And there's ongoing training. Becky Lehman provides training after school for the Common Study and Learning Area Leaders, so they get that ongoing facilitation support. So we're excited for the next group to come through. And what am I missing? I know I am. I'm missing something.
Hopefully you had a chance to read the note, and it's we've made a lot of revisions to the program, right? We took input and changed some of the things that weren't as strong, and we're trying to strengthen it up. We also want to, you had mentioned learning area leaders, we wanted to be a little more transparent because there's maybe a lack of understanding about the different roles, like what does a common study leader do, what does a learning area leader do, they have different job responsibilities, and we wanted to just make it really clear like how they're different because they are, and we're just trying to create a little more transparency between the elementaries and the high school in that respect. So even though the high school has been doing learning area leadership for a long time, we've been trying to strengthen that with some deliberate training and coaching teams. So that's been kind of a new piece to them, and that's what we're all doing as a district, is strengthening that work. It's not enough to just be put in a position to be in charge. Leadership is hard, facilitation is hard, particularly among your colleagues. It's kind of that middle level management position. And we want to support that with skill training and ongoing support. So iteration 2.
I was just curious, are those positions hard to fill? I read your note and
in some areas, there's definitely like a couple of departments who are like, not me, but not most of them. So, and we try to meet them where they are, and we've talked with our A team and have said, well, listen, if we've got a group that doesn't want to be the lead facilitator, is there anybody who's willing to be the facilitator? And they've said yes. So, so we have a plan for that. Yeah. We don't want it to be a burden. Right. We want it to be an opportunity to learn and grow, and so that's the goal. Yeah. And so then my piece is the AI update. So that's also in the note, but I just would want to highlight something Mike had shared a little earlier in his report. He had said Pematic on the January 22nd day offered professional development in the afternoon on inclusion and differentiation. And just to give you an example of how I think our communal, our teaching community fundamentally changed within a day. And to be honest, I feel like we tripped into it. I mean, it was like, let's start this meeting, and all this stuff is happening. Let's start talking about it. We really should communicate this with teachers. And it's just sort of evolved. And in fact, when we learned all about the environmental aspects, we said, well, maybe we could do some guidance, like AI hygiene. Google something, right? And that's doesn't require as much energy and power than doing an AI search for something simple. Well, now, of course, we've lost that. Good thing we didn't go that level of direction and direction, because it's changing so fast. We're not even sure how to guide and support. We did get guidance from the state though, just last Friday, and we're going to be looking at it with our team next Friday. It's public, it's not a secret, but we're going to talk about how we're going to support teachers with that guidance. And I know I'm talking really fast, but I have to tell you, the state has done a very good job with this guidance and the support they have given us. They help train us, it's honestly, I've never really said anything nice about any state initiatives. And it's like, but they hired teachers, right, to do this work. And it's like, oh, they didn't hire politicians. They hired teachers to do this work, and they're doing a really good job. And it's useful and practical and super beneficial, and they're really being helpful. So I want to give a little kudos to the state on that one. But anyways, I went to this PD in the afternoon after this morning, and this professor from UMaine was talking about how to create accessible readings for all students. And she said, well, you can take a chapter and rewrite it in different levels of lexile, as reading levels. And that's good practice. And that's why teachers don't do it. They don't have time to take a chapter and rewrite it in different levels. And it's been an ongoing struggle to really implement good inclusion and differentiation, because it's a really almost impossible demand. Well, I looked out into the audience, because that morning half the group there sat in sessions, all these different sessions that showed you how to do it in under 5 minutes using AI. Mm-hmm. And there was like this little twinkle in everybody's eyes, like this lady missed the session, right? And I just knew right then, oh, we are different now. Like it was, we are on, this is going to really close the gap and do our students justice in making learning accessible to all. And I'll just give you an example. In one of the sessions on that day, one of our special ed teachers had said, listen, I go to classrooms and they say, don't worry, the kid's gonna pass. And it's a really tough pill to swallow, to say, I don't want my student to just pass that I'm advocating for. I want my student to learn. Mm-hmm. And what is it gonna take to create a space for that student in your space where they are part of the learning community, not just for socialization, but true learning. Mm-hmm. And people left going, oh, I could do that. Like, I could do that now. And so for me, there are definitely some outliers who are unhappy with the day. For me, the day was incredibly powerful, because we definitely understood the reality we're dealing with here and the power of the school and the possibilities. So, but there's, real concerns to be dealt with as well. But that's what we're dealing with, and we're ongoing with that. Any questions or thoughts about that?
To our discussion items. The first two are truly discussion items. The calendar, we're hoping we can take action on. But so the first item is first reading of revisions to policy ACAD hazing, which is linked to your agenda. Hopefully you have a chance to open it up and use it.
That was just suggestions from main school management in terms of consolidating and streamlining the language in terms of the hazing and adding the piece about any activity expected of a student as a condition of joining and behaviors attached to that, so expanding it.
So are there, you're not voting on it tonight, but are there any questions about this one? Think of any in the meantime, you can be in touch. IMBE, accommodation of sincere beliefs and required instruction.
This again was from main school management and looking at streamlining the language around someone that wishes to exempt the child from certain instruction, so it lays that process out a little bit more clearly.
We'll bring these back for a vote at the next meeting, so if you notice any questions you have, definitely bring them to the attention of the policy committee. Now, our favorite topic, draft school calendar.
So I think everybody got the draft in their packet. And the adjustments that I made after listening to all the feedback, part of all of that, some of that will be taken up in starting after the February break. I want to reconvene that committee and do some work in thinking about the 26, 27 calendar moving forward. So specifically, heard a lot about the back-to-back ER days in November, and so we removed those, which seemed unpopular. And to maintain the open weeks, I moved the school-based day to 11/14 and the district-based day to 11/25. This will maintain the integrity of the open weeks. One of the things, after doing some of the tweaks, we actually increased those number of weeks to 23 weeks throughout the calendar. And if you remember from the last conversation, we had 16 of those weeks that people were considering broken that had early releases in there. But again, my perception is I don't do early releases of broken weeks, but I just wanted to make sure people understood that. And then secondly, we took a look at the December holiday, and with a recognition that that was too long based on the conversation from folks around the table. And so we have the 22nd as a regular day, and then the 23rd as a regular old-fashioned early release. Everybody goes home to begin their holiday break on the 23rd. One mention of note, because of some of those changes, if you go into January, you will see at the week of the Martin Luther King holiday. Right now, we have that semester change happening on the 23rd. But one of the things, we kind of moved that over to make sure we have the appropriate days. But what happens if there's a snow day within there, it would be important to then move that teacher day to the 26th, and then you would have school, and it would be an early release on that Friday. That's just in case, and that just helps maintain those important days of school within the quarters. And that's just kind of a little funky piece there to make that all work. And this hasn't changed, so we're still only 3 days out of alignment with the HCTC calendar. Double check our numbers before we make sure that is right there. But if you recall, we can only be 5 out.
Do snow days instead affect the being out of alignment with HCTC or no?
For the most part, we talk and are in sync in terms of those days.
Might be a premature question, but in the event that the current administration eliminates certain holidays, how does that affect the calendar? Do we just have a school day, or would we?
I have no idea.
I don't think
That's
they
a really good
would.
question,
Yeah.
but I don't think that they can
They legally can't change
strike
it.
a holiday.
You can't remove it, you can add one. I'm optimistic.
Christmas.
A lot to be continued.
Yes. And I have to say, and just those types of questions, I mean, we get, regardless of, in administration, the DOE has been the main DOE has been very thoughtful in terms of getting information and sharing that with leaders around the state, because you're getting a lot of questions, and some of them you don't know.
I wasn't sure if you had more information.
I'll actually, yeah.
So I was just on that floating, the 23rd of January. So that holiday, or that day, may or may not. Like we're not going to know until.
You won't
next
know
year.
unless we have a snow day.
Okay.
In
And then
December,
we'll
and
just communicate that.
yeah, and then it would shift, and we would blast out that information.
So make sure I understood how.
But Mike was on the same question though. Do you mind if Susan, if I follow up on that? I'm just wondering if, like, let's say the 22nd is a no school or a power outage day. Is that going to cause any hardships for people if we're then switching with almost no notice? Should we say that or is it possible to say that, we're giving it a week, not up until the 23rd, but up until the 16th? Or is that gonna cause
Could there be a
problems?
buffer, like a buffer built into the
Right.
decision making?
Exactly.
Probably yes, because that would be kind of quick.
Yeah.
I'd have to work with Matt to figure out what that would look like. We can come up with some kind of thoughtful protocol.
I mean, I think it's a great idea to have that flexibility, but I just wouldn't want to see, parents of younger kids put
Yes.
into a really difficult situation.
Something like that week.
Yeah.
This is one of the few drawbacks of having an aligned K-8 and high school calendar. Like, until that was the case, we were able to move at the end of a semester at the high school. We were able to move days around because, especially in the days when we had major final exams, like, you had to make that move. Now that it's a combined calendar, like the scenario you just described as a snow day in that last week is disastrous.
Mm-hmm.
So I would be nervous about making a rule that we're not going to move it if it happens in that week, but we can figure something out.
Well, could it be moved just for the high school? What type of a, is it?
The teacher, that day
Professional
is
development?
for report cards for elementary teachers, and then it's the switch over for high school students, as Matt has described.
Yeah.
Often that's the preparing for the new school year that next semester.
Right.
Yeah.
So is there any flexibility? I mean, I love that we have the aligned calendar, but is there any way to be flexible for the high school to be able to make a different decision than the elementary schools in that kind of a case?
I'll have to think about it.
Yeah.
I can't make a decision on the spot.
Yeah.
That's not the way I
No, that's
like to
fine.
think about it.
That's fine.
But I'm sure we can come up with something that's thoughtful and sort of share that. And the biggest hope is there's no weather. That's the tough thing to think about.
The concerns I had in the last round have all been made, I would say. It seems like a more consistent weeks. The two holidays are more sensitive to longer holidays. So on that note, I would like to move to approve this calendar. I don't want to have a caveat. I trust that you guys can figure out that. I don't feel like I need to be a part of that. But also, I want to reiterate that we have made a commitment to figure out aftercare for these early releases. I don't want to forget that. I don't think that can happen. I think it only can benefit future early release options on a more consistent basis down the road. So, yes. But ultimately, I'm making a motion to approve the calendar.
I'd like to really briefly just piggyback on, like, what's the process for this committee that has been badged around for a little while? Like
Second,
Crystal-
in the discussion portion.
Yes.
Any discussion?
Oh, yes, thank you. Okay, you made a, yes, that is no discussion. What is the process of, there's a.
Yeah,
It's already underway.
It's already underway.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
All right, well, whatever we can support that. It's wonderful.
And we'll start.
Crystal spoke to it.
We're gonna start after the February break.
Wonderful.
The only thing I was wondering about is I talked about, putting a marker here for when the seniors stop going to school, or whatever that day is, in a colored block or something, not just like an asterisk, but, and like a little explanation of what that is, like all the other things. If not less, obvious as any other symbol. What?
Leopard print.
No, just like, yeah, whatever, choose whatever color you want, but just not like an asterisk. But you have to like go look to see what it means. So if we pass that, we need that, cut it out, okay.
Yes.
Any more discussion? Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? Okay, we have a calendar.
Thank you all.
Thanks for all the work on that.
Okay, any other business? Okay, future agenda items, well, and, oh, sorry.
No, I don't know if it's business or, but, this might be for Julie and Rhonda. There was an article about the nation's report card that's out there in the world, and so if you weren't planning on giving us a glimpse of what that looks like for our schools, could you do that for the next meeting?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we just saw it ourselves.
Yeah, it took me like, so many paywalls I couldn't get to it, but I think I finally got to it.
Yes.
So that is a future agenda, well,
Yep.
as part of the report,
Yep.
and then we'll, considering what we're doing today, brought forward.
I sort of just, I just want to clarify that you were asking on that how Maine didn't do well nationally.
I wanna know how, I mean, I care
Where
about
we
Wayne,
rank in
but
Maine.
like, I care about what, like, how we fit into that, and whether,
Yeah, okay.
I care about their understanding, interpretation, impressions, data associated with that for our AOS.
Okay.
And I think I'm just assuming we're gonna keep up on future executive board.
Yes.
Yeah, those will be in my update, anything that I need to share.
Okay. Is there another item? Any more public comment? Okay, our next meeting will be Monday, the 10th of March, time probably 6, but wait and see. Before everyone packs up, we do have an executive session, pursuant to contract negotiations, pretty quick. Is there a motion? Yeah.
Eager.
Okay.
So